Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Digital Health and Wearable series. Today I have another magnificent guest and leader for you. But before I go ahead, make sure you subscribe to the channel, to this magnificent content, and also let me acknowledge our partners. FUJIFILM, our content partner, innovators in healthcare. We have our series partner, Salesforce, the world's number one CRM for healthcare and life sciences, and our global partner, Spirit Digital. But without further ado, let me introduce you to Andreas Dam. He's the CEO at Daman. Andreas, how are you?
Thanks, and hello, João, and thanks a lot for inviting me to this series. I'm really good, thanks. Had a nice summer. I hope you're well too. I would also just like to thank you for all your efforts in driving innovation in healthcare. João, you're doing a great job, and all I've seen since we met in Paris, it's been really truly amazing to follow you. So thanks for having me also on this series here.
Andreas, likewise, and you've been doing great stuff. And we met a long time ago. It feels a long time ago, 2015 or 2016 in Paris, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, there was a great time. That's where it all started for me.
Exactly.
Look, today we're kind of discussing innovation in pharma because it's your industry and you are an expert and you have your business and you're doing great things. So I'm going straight to the questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah,
brilliant. So the first question that I have for you is, why is the patient so important to pharma?
Yes, it's a really good point. So, you could argue that it should always have been like that. And I used to work in pharma many years back. And to be honest, it wasn't that much focus back then. But I think there are two, let's say, major macro trends or changes in the healthcare ecosystem that triggers this. First one is the empowerment on us as a consumer. So that we have seen from nearly any other industry. And that's also happening in healthcare. But maybe at a slower pace. But that's this kind of, I as a consumer, as a person with a disease, I am gonna, want to take my own decisions or impact my own situation with my disease. And for that reason, it's also important to pharma because I can be, if we're talking shared decision making, I'm part of making choices that will impact also what type of medicine I would be on. So that's kind of the one major trend we see. And the other one is the huge price pressure that's coming more and more from the payers, whether it's insurance companies or public healthcare providers. They're really imposing a pressure on price towards pharma. And that really calls for, I would say, new business models, but also different kind of state of data, where you can show more of outcomes from real daily life of people living with a certain disease. And again, that means it's very important for pharma to focus and work with the patients, the people living with a certain disease.
Oh, brilliant! So the patient has a crucial role, not just around the business model, but all the involvement with everything else. Thank you for that, Andreas.
Exactly.
Moving on to the second question, why is pharma still struggling with being patient-centric?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I mean, they really want to be patient-centric, and they really, and for most of the pharma clients we work with, and we really work with a lot over the years, it's not because they want to just be commercial and look at profits. They really want to make a difference in patients' lives and really want to help out patients. I think they're struggling mostly due to the regulatory stuff internally, and they're very risk adverse. But I would say, even on a deeper level, I think you could say the more patient-centric ones right now, they have learned two things and changed two type of things in their culture, in their organization. First one is the type of way they interact or involve the patients, right? And that's where, for instance, co-creation, co-design methodologies is very much applied, also in alignment with design thinking and so on. And this is really something that we're seeing more and more. that pharma is really willing to, and also actually they succeed with co-creation. But I think that's what historically have been tricky for them. So that's the one thing. And then I would say the other thing is that, pharma, they are used to these really long R&D processes. Like when you want to develop a new drug, it's you want to only put it to market after maybe 10 years after testing and making sure it's safe, it's efficient, and all of these things. And the thing is, when we look at new technologies, you have to flip it completely around. You're going to succeed only if you bring some kind of minimal viable product very early to the market. So it's a complete shift in mindset inside pharma. And I think this have taken time. I think that at different levels of the organization in pharma, it has really taken a long time to realize that they need to shift this around. And we should move away from, we're involved in a lot of digital health projects. And typically years back, it would take maybe 1, 2, maybe even 3 years before they put the first product into the market. And now when we're working with the innovative teams, we're testing something after 2 or 3 months. And that enables us to learn and to maybe change course. Because I think also what pharma has realized now is that, there are, I think, more than 400,000 health apps already in app stores. And many of them, are not being used, and they're not really as successful among the healthcare professionals and patients as was the intention from pharma. So they also do recognize that there is a need to change. But it's still an ongoing process, I would say. And I think everybody in pharma talks about patient centricity. In my opinion, there are still only a few that is really, really living this to a full extent.
Andreas, thank you so much. Fantastic points there. I mean, the culture shift, the regulatory barriers, but also what you mentioned, very important. The industry as a whole, the pharma industry, is like risk averse, so they need, of course, to evolve. But people are doing a great job in innovation to kind of push things to move a bit forward and a bit faster. And you're playing a role in challenging them in operating in a different way. So thank you so much for that. Moving on, the third question is: what are the changes in healthcare ecosystem that require pharma to adapt, innovate, and include patients?
Yeah, good question. So again, I would say a number of points, maybe starting with the financial aspects. So it's a fact that we live longer and longer, and that's a nice thing. But that also puts a huge pressure on our healthcare ecosystem in general. So, when I'm getting older, I'm going to live with maybe not just one chronic disease, but multiple chronic diseases. And the current way we are provisioning care towards people with diseases is it will be under huge pressure. And I can't see where there will be more money coming from in the future. So we need to look at how can we more efficiently use the funding, the healthcare resources we have. And that means also a transition that will impact pharma from let's say, looking just at medical or treatment, or looking at, how do we create what we call medical value. It's going to transition more to be looking at multiple factors. For instance, also looking at what is the patient value, what's the societal value. And this calls also for new business models to pharma. And pharma is also pressured by its own industry, because it's very tricky today to bring in a completely new blue ocean, where there's no treatments available. There's a lot of medical compounds available in most disease areas, and it's tricky to really revolutionize just from a medical perspective. So this also calls for potentially more holistic offerings from pharma, where you're not just delivering drugs, but you're actually providing care or delivering healthcare as a whole. And this is the transition towards more outcome-based business models. So, for instance, you probably know Novo Nordisk here in Denmark. Instead of they're getting paid per dose of insulin, they are paid for how many well-treated diabetes patients that's seen in a certain market. So these are kind of the new business models that's coming more and more. And I think really that's the way forward, because pharma, they are a huge player in the healthcare ecosystem, and I really think they can help improve care without us having to spend more money into our healthcare system. So I think there's a huge opportunity there, but it is of course also it's a complex ecosystem, and it's every stakeholder that needs to adapt and change. So it's also going to require, not just by pharma itself, but also by the entire payer system, that there's an openness to test new business models and engage in new types of partnerships. So I really see a lot of things going on these years, and it's a fantastic journey to follow, that we're going from this kind of standard care where there's maybe one or few drugs available, and that's all we do in the intervention of care. And now we are moving not just towards personalized health, where we look at genomics, but we're also including aspects like personomics, which are data points from real life, from the living your daily life, society, what type of education, how you're doing with your energy, your mood, and so on. And combining that can really enable us to deliver not just precision medicine, but precision health. And I think this is really important, because a lot of the things where we struggle today with chronic disease management, it lies on the patient side. It's actually tricky to have the good behavior, so you will have the best life possible with your disease, because you can be heavily impacted by pain or fatigue or mental deroutes and so on. So it really takes a tailored, personalized healthcare offering to enable each individual to have the best life, despite living with a certain disease or living with multiple diseases.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much for that. There was so much in there. I was trying to put my thoughts together. At the beginning, you mentioned, of course, the need to adapt, and the way healthcare is delivered now, it will not suit us in the future. In other words, and you mentioned the value-based outcomes, and there is a big conversation now going on about value-based healthcare, as you know. So we're moving in that direction. And also you mentioned these aspects of personalized medicine and genomics and the data points, and of course the behavior, because the behavior is one of the most important things. Thank you so much. So much to consider there, Andreas. Brilliant. The fourth and last question is, what's the difference between co-creation and the traditional way of involving patients and healthcare providers?
Yes, good point. So I think, So a lot of buzz, and it's kind of I think nearly in every project today you say we're also using co-creation, and I would even say within co-creation it's often a little bit misunderstood how it's being applied. So when you do projects, you can talk about different types of methodologies. And I won't go through in depth with all of them here on this short session that we have today. But co-creation, it belongs into the category where it's a partnership you're setting up. And that means that when you do true co-creation, you sort of you're not just inviting in patients, relatives, doctors and nurses and have their input. It's actually a true partnership where sort of the ownership of the thing you're doing, that's placed in the middle of this co-creation group among these stakeholders. And this means that if you're a pharma doing this kind of project, to be truly doing co-creation, you're shifting that power or decision power to be in the middle of that co-creation stakeholder group. Of course, you're still applying to certain regulatory and legal aspects due to you being pharma, but it's very different from just involving or just running some ad boards or or having some KOLs involved or patient organizations. It's a truly change in the way you operate. And I think it takes some courage to do that. And I have seen some markets very ready to do so, and some maybe also due to cultural things are more careful about this. But I would just really recommend try it out, because we have really seen tremendous results of this. And again, if we look at the long-term result of the initiatives, we have seen so many well-thought initiatives coming from pharma, but they never really got uptake among patients and healthcare professionals. It really never became standard of care. And we have seen that when we have really applied co-creation, it's a huge success. So I can strongly recommend to try it out. And I can say that since 2013, for more or less every project we have applied co-creation. We even convinced the government here in Denmark to apply co-creation with some projects within cancer and shared decision making. So this is also my strong appeal here, really to try it out. Have the courage to try it. You will see amazing results.
Brilliant. Andreas, what a way to finish. And co-creation is extremely important. And you've been doing great work, because you've been doing it for a long time, and people should talk to you about co-creation. Anyway, look, we come into
I'm happy to share about all our failures too, right? So we can help each other.
the learnings. But we're coming to the end of the show. Andreas, before I thank you for your time, your expertise, and everything else, and thank you for addressing the questions in an amazing way. I finish all my shows in a peculiar way. It's not really a question. It's called 1 minute of fame. You can talk about anything. We're talking about our kids before the recording, right?
Exactly.
You can talk about anything. A shout out to a company, a colleague, a family, personal achievements, anything whatsoever. So over to you to round up 1 minute of fame.
Thanks a lot, João. Thanks for that. So I would like to actually continue a little bit the topic on this with patient centricity. What I've also met is the language, the terminology we use is also not so adequate, if you ask me. Because when you use the term patient, you actually, even if you look it up, also what's the definition of patient? It's somebody been kind of done something too. And I don't think, or at least with all the people that we have worked with that are living with a certain kind of disease, very, very few of them like to be called a patient. They're people. They are João, they are Andreas, they are, and I think it's tricky to find a good word. How do we describe it? We use now the wording people with living with a disease, for instance. But I think it's really important to recognize that there's a change that is needed in terms of this empowerment. And I think it also starts with the language, and it's not just the language, it's all the behavior around it. But many people, when they go in the clinic, they may feel as a number, just in a long queue, and they don't feel as a whole seen and heard as a whole person, as a whole human being. So I would really appeal to everybody in this healthcare space, to doctors, to pharma. Please start by changing your language and terminology used here, because you are not your disease. You are a human being with a disease, and we shouldn't impose this that you are your disease by using the term patient. So that would be my 1 minute appeal during this session here.
Andreas, thank you so much. What a way to finish. Actually, I saw a tweet yesterday about that, about calling a patient, which is not the right thing. Thank you so much for that appeal.
Welcome.
And let me congratulate you on your work, your achievements, your professional life, but also thank you for sharing this amazing expertise.
And thanks for your time, João. Thank you.
Brilliant. I'm going to round up now. Andreas, lovely to have you. And anyway, to our viewers and listeners, I'm going to post Andreas' LinkedIn, Twitter, and his website. Make sure you connect with him and acknowledge our partners, the content partner FUJIFILM, series partner Salesforce, and our global partner Spirit Digital. And I'll see you all next week.